A very good afternoon and welcome to this week's Lite Bite Lunch. It's Thursday, the 8th of November. If you're watching it live, it's just after 1 p.m. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Brian Dwyer from Rockwell Financial, who is going to tell us everything we need to know about pensions, auto enrollment, my future fund. So grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair. For the next half hour, sit back, relax, and join us for a Lite Bite Lunch. Good afternoon. Yes, and as I said, it is the Lite Bite Lunch. And Brian, thank you so much for being able to join us today. Yeah. Apologies that we did have the wrong name shown as Brian O'Dwyer, but we have you there anyway. So,
how are you, Rory?
Not too bad. So, Brian, before we start, maybe just give people a little bit of your own background, who you are, what you do, etc.
Sure, yeah. Brian Dwyer, I'm the Employee Benefits Manager here at Rockwell Financial Management. So essentially, that's just a way of me saying that I look after companies set up their pension schemes, life cover, income protection, and, just liaise with HR managers and the owners in these companies to make sure everything's running smoothly, make sure their staff are looked after. That's really it. That's essentially it. Now, there's a lot in it, so I'm not going to go into the details of it, but that's the general scope of what I do. I've been working with Rockwell for just over 5 years there recently enough, but I've been doing this for probably 10 years now, mostly with groups with employee benefits. But yeah, I've done a bit of individual advice, some cash flow analysis, some stuff like that. So this is what I'm comfortable with. I generally find this is what I'm going to do. And I go out to companies a lot, do days on the road. A lot of what we do is on Teams nowadays anyway. So we do that mostly, but I will go out to a company, do a presentation. I'll have one-to-ones with staff, and we'll organize getting everyone looked after from the guy just in the door to the managers, to the bosses, everyone in between. So that's pretty much it. That's my working life.
Yeah, brilliant. So, I I think income protection is something we could definitely bring you on again in the future to talk about, because especially for micro owners, it's such an important feature to have in place.
It's huge. Yeah, absolutely. You're more likely to be unable to work before 65 than die before 65. Yeah. It's a miserable statistic, but it is true.
It is what it is, and you have to address these facts. And again, because of the way the social welfare scheme is set up, as a micro business, if something goes wrong, for the large part, you're on your own.
You're on your own. Yeah, absolutely. Our state's good enough. We do get some protections, but Ireland is the most expensive country, one of the most expensive countries in the world. So, if you want to kind of maintain any resemblance to your previous lifestyle, you got to insure yourself. It's just like you insure your car. Your car Absolutely. Is worth a lot less than you're worth. So just makes sense when you look at it simply like that.
Yeah, that's it. But we'll certainly plan that for a show for early next year and get the planning in place for that. So when should you start your pension?
It's straight away. It's easy for me to say that. Now, most people won't start their pension straight away. If you're 21 years old, it's your first job, I can guarantee you pension's the last thing you are thinking about, unless it's forced on you. But the way pensions work, the earlier you start, the less you have to put in. So there's a number of reasons, it's basically because of compound interest. So the fact that whatever you put into your pension, you get tax relief on straight away. So, you start off working, you're going to start off as a lower rate taxpayer, you get 20% off. If you want to put 100 quid into your pension a month, you put in 100, maybe your employer puts in 50 or 100, and what's reduced from your take home pay is 80. So effectively the tax relief is done for you straight away. And if you're doing that when you're in your 20s, this is going to be invested for 40 years. And if you look at any well-managed investment over 40 years, you're going to get a lot of this. But when you stretch that graph out, it smooths out to that and it really goes up. So you don't see the benefit for the first 15, 20 years. But when it really starts to snowball, you're talking tens of thousands a year of interest. And that can all start from a tiny little contribution at the start in your 20s. Most people will probably start really contributing late 30s, 40s. Some people don't start until their 50s. Everyone's got a different circumstance in life. It's never too late. The return you get on your investment is pretty heavy. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, you get 40% tax relief. Assuming your employer's contributing as well, you can max that out and you can make up for lost time, but ideally 20s straight away. Just it becomes a habit.
Yeah, well, I always remember one of the first times I heard Robert being asked that question, and his answer was yesterday.
That's it. It's 100%. Go back in time and start working when you're 15 and start it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Now, before we get into the heaviness of talking about auto enrollment, etc., the question that every guest who comes on the show gets asked: for you, what's the ideal Lite Bite Lunch?
I have to think about this one. I like a bit of variety, but on my mind lately, nice tomato soup, ham and cheese, sourdough bread. That's, I don't know, just on my mind lately. I like a bit of variety though.
Yeah, well, you have to have a bit of variety in it, otherwise it gets boring very, very quickly. So tell me, before we get into the nitty gritty of auto enrollment and my future fund, if somebody currently has their own private pension, nothing to do with their job, they just pay into it privately themselves. Should they partake in auto enrollment? Should they seek an exemption? Does an exemption even exist if somebody has an existing pension already?
No. So basically, it's all done via payroll. If you have a private pension, you could be putting in 100 quid a month. You could be putting in 10,000 a month. The revenue won't know it, right? The new organization, NERSA, they're not going to see it because it's all done via payroll. So you will be automatically included, assuming you're age 23 to 60, earning over 20,000 a year through all your employments, right? Most of us have one job, a lot of us won't when you're younger. But effectively, how you should look at it is, what are you getting back? Auto enrollment, it's starting off small. First 3 years, 1.5% employer, 1.5 employee, 0.5 state top up. No tax relief on your contributions. So that's the big thing. There's no tax relief on what you put in because the government's giving you a 0.5% top, right? Why they've done it that way, I don't know. To be honest, I'm not sure they know themselves, but I don't know anyway. But if you have your own private pension, should you go into auto enrollment? Well, look, if you want to get an extra 1.5% from your employer, you should. Yeah, I mean, it's free money. It's part of the rules now. So in that case, it's going to be a bit more of a headache because you're going to have to look after your own pension and the auto enrollment pension. So it's a little bit more work, but at the end of the day, you want to be getting as much out of your job as you can. And if it's another 1.5% that you weren't previously in receipt of, I take it. It's a little bit more work, but I do it myself.
Yeah. And in that regard, I know there is an opportunity to opt out after 6 months. If an employee opts out, can they ask the employer to continue giving them that 1.5% extra?
No. So yeah, the way they've done it's weird. It's, you can only opt out after 6 months, right? You can suspend your contributions after 6 months as well. So it's at this 6-month period. If you decide to opt out, you can request a refund of your contributions. You will not get a refund of the employer contributions or the state contributions. So you only get what you put in back, okay? Then you're going to be automatically re-enrolled every 2 years unless you join your own pension scheme. Now, you can also suspend contributions after 6 months. So again, the 6 month period comes, you can say, look, I want to suspend my contributions. You're kind of limited. You can only suspend it for a minimum of 1 year or a maximum of 2 years. Very rigid, very fixed, to be honest with you. So that's it.
And is that, just to clarify, is that 2 years over the lifetime of the scheme, or is that you can do it for 2 years, go back on it for a year, do it for 2 years, go back on it for a year?
Yeah, look, that's what they're saying now. So it's not over the lifetime, but look, these rules are going to change. Do you know what I mean? It just makes sense, because the whole point of the auto-enrollment scheme is to make sure the people that don't want anything to do with pensions are paying into their own pensions, because we can't afford state pensions for everyone in the country. Our economy just cannot handle it. It's called the pensions time bomb, right? We have a certain number of older people versus younger people. So our demographic is totally different from when pensions were set up. You know, you used to get your pension at 65. Life expectancy, I think, was like 68 or 70 or something like that. So, you know, the state didn't really have to pay much. Life expectancy now is in its 90s. A lot of people you meet are going to be alive until 90, 100. And we're still retiring at 66. So the state pension age has gone up 1 year. Life expectancy has gone up decades. We cannot afford the state pension. Now, they're saying that the auto-enrollment scheme is not going to replace it. And that's correct. It's not going to replace it. However, just mathematically speaking, unless we start having many more children than we're having, or more people come here and start working and paying PRSI contributions, the state pension will change eventually. One way or another, France tried to increase their state pension age by 2 years and the city went up in flames. So, you know, it's not an easy solution. Auto-enrollment is going to try and fix that, and it will fix a bit of it. It's very low contributions for the first 3 years, but it is going to increase, and in 10 years time it's going to be 6% employer, 6% employee, 2% from the government, which is significant, you know, with growth when you take into account growth.
Absolutely. So
just actually, I think I missed your point, but the opt-out, that is after 6 months, and you can only do it in months 7 and 8. Very specifically, months 7 and 8. Like, I don't really see the reasoning for that myself, but it is what it is. Whereas if you just want to suspend, you can do it anytime after month 6, as they say. And I got information yesterday from an up-to-date webinar run by the Department of Social Protection.
Right, we do have a question for you there, Brian. If an employee opts out and the employee is refunded, will the employer be refunded?
Not at all. No, this is it. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to match auto-enrollment as closely as possible to what's called a PRSA. You might have heard of it yourself. It's like a simplified pension in a way. With a PRSA, if your employer gives you €100, €1,000 in your pension and you leave work the next day, they cannot get it back. The reason being is everything that's in a PRSA or in the auto-enrollment fund is owned by that employee. The employer or the government have no interest in it. The second it's paid over, it belongs to the employee. So the employer will never get their money back, or the government can never request their own funds back. There might be a case where there might be a bit of an overlap between contributions, or, you know, an administration error. In that circumstance, the employer will get money back if they are owed it and it wasn't due to that employee. But as it stands, no. If client opts out and takes a refund, employee only. Everything else remains until retirement with the employee.
And so if somebody then opts out and have taken their rebate, does that mean then there is still a little bit of a fund there when they retire from the employer's contribution and the state top-up?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So that's the plan. That's the plan, really. In the future, again, I can only see this changing, you know, but no, absolutely. So we're starting off at small numbers. So if people start opting out now in July and August of 2026, there'll be a few quid, there'll be a couple of €100 that was contributed by the employer and the government. That's going to remain invested. So that employee, while they might have taken back their own money, they can still log on to this new member portal and they can change their investment from low risk to high risk, and it remains invested and managed until age 66.
Right. So, well, you've given us a brief overview there of how the My Future Fund is going to work.
Yeah.
You mentioned there about changing it from default to low risk, high risk, medium risk, etc. Is there going to be somebody to actually offer guidance in how to do this, or is this something whereby it's worth getting that professional advice to know what's best?
We don't know. I generally don't know. Like I know that there's a few fund managers that have been mentioned: Irish Life, Monday, and BlackRock. All good fund managers. But the fact is, auto enrollment is going to be very low cost, right? So the reason why it's low cost is because there's so many people involved in it. However, it's very rigid. It's fixed. I don't believe there's going to be an equivalent to an advisor in the NERSA department, because they'd have to start charging people more money for it. So I don't believe that's going to happen. And the numbers are too low really at the moment to make paying for advice worthwhile. So if you are serious about a pension and actually, providing yourself with a decent retirement, you need to set up your own pension. You need to get actual advice on it, because most people have no idea about pensions. They have no idea about tax relief or investing, and why should they? It's not their job. So, having someone there to actually bring you through this and explain it when times are good and explain it when times are bad, it can mean the difference in a lot of money, when you look down the line. So I don't believe there's going to be anyone that you're going to be able to talk to in there, at least not initially, probably some AI chatbot or something like that. So you only really get that when you have the company pension or your own private pension through an advisor.
Right. Well, I just need to make quick mention about this. Well, it's good news. Everyone has recovered from this year's awards, and we're all full steam ahead for next year's. I will say that if everyone wants to join us in 2 weeks' time on the Lite Bite Lunch, we will have very special announcements in relation to Awards 2026. So definitely worth knowing. What I can tell you so far, the venue is going to be Castledargan in Sligo. The tickets are priced at €100, and I would say book early. I would also highlight Castledargan is quite a small property. So if you're looking to come along and stay, book your room as soon as possible, because they are going to fill up very, very quickly. I've just spoken to the hotel this morning, and there are already 6 rooms booked. So anyone planning to come along, do get in touch, give Castledargan a call, and they will look after you. But as I said, do join us in 2 weeks' time for the Lite Bite Lunch, where you're going to get a huge update and a few surprises in relation to Awards 2026. That's the promo for that out of the way, thankfully. So I wanted to move on and talk to you about when the time comes, right? And it's time to cash out. People will it be the same process as applying for your social welfare pension, that people will have forms to fill in and submit in advance, or will it be a case that automatically the pension will start paying out, or do we know that yet?
Again, we don't really know the exact details, but no, it's not going to be automatic. I cannot believe it will be. You're going to have to fill in some sort of details. Maybe not as much as you would if you had a better pension, if you had a better pension through your company, because there's other rules, because this is really the most simplified version. My understanding is you are going to have to contact them. They might even reach out to you because they'll have access to your age and maybe you're 6 months away. So one way or another, you're going to have to contact them. You're going to have to fill out some sort of form. You make sure you have the right bank details, and they're going to have to explain to you what's going to happen. So as I said earlier, it's really connected to what's called a PRSA, and PRSA gets paid out 25% is a tax efficient lump sum, mostly tax free, and then the balance is used to, you have a few different options, but everyone really goes into an approved retirement fund. So it's going to be the exact same, whatever your pot is. So let's say you have a pot of €200,000, right, in this auto enrollment pension. And that's your only pension. So what's going to happen is you fill out your forms and they're going to pay 25% of that tax-free to you. So 50 grand goes into your bank account, and then 150, more than likely, you're going to put it into what's called an approved retirement fund, which is essentially just the same thing as a pension. However, you would draw at least 4% of that income on an annual basis. Now, the money is reinvested and it grows. So, ideally it grows at 5%. You would draw 4% and you get a 1% annual management charge on that. So it's a bit complicated. I'm not going to go into the exact details of it, but no, the forms there. But it shouldn't be too complicated. I'm saying that, look, I've dealt with, whenever you deal with the government for anything, it seems complicated and their forms are archaic, and it's just not the simplest dealing with them. So I'd be prepared to spend a bit of time on it, but hopefully not too much.
And tell me, is that then going to be deemed taxable income? Do we know, or?
Yeah, it's same thing. Same thing. It's the same as the PRSA is at the moment. So depending, if you've got other income coming in, you have to really consider how much you want to take out from your ARF, we call it. So here's a scenario for you. If you have no income coming in and you just have this ARF, the minimum you have to take out is 4%. But if your tax advisor saying, actually, you can take out 5.5% and still be on the lower tax bracket, that's when the advice pays off, really, because you can take out more, pay little tax. So you're making your whole life cycle of the pension more tax efficient. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you might be working part-time. Maybe you take your benefit at 66 and you're still in a job. You just love it and you keep working there part-time. You need to take that into account when it comes to how much you withdraw from the ARF. Because if you say, look, I want to take 6%, you might be paying 40-something% of that in tax. So again, at that stage, you need to take care. You need to sit down with the tax man. You need to sit down with ourselves and plan what you want to do, how much you need from each source of income.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. So I think we've covered a lot. Is there any death benefit or something like that attached? So in other words, if somebody's paying in and unfortunately doesn't make it to 66, what happens to their fund?
Yeah, it's crystallized. So just like the PRSA, it's crystallized, meaning that, this is your money. It's not, it's not made up numbers. These are investments. So depending what your investment is at that stage, at whatever age it is, it's basically crystallized and sent to your estate. And however your will dictates, it's divided out between your family. So that is important. A lot of people will kind of think that these are only kind of made up numbers, and if the government's there, I don't know, maybe they'll have access to it. None of that is true. Whenever you invest into this auto enrollment pension, it's not great, fair enough, but the money is yours, and whatever growth is there is yours. It grows tax-free. You have the same rights to it as you would if you have your own private pension, and as you would if you had your own PRSA. If you die early, you know that fund is there for your family. Right, so it is there. Again, you won't be able to really fund it though. To be fair, if you're only contributing 1.5%, you're stuck. One of the big differences between auto enrollment and your own company pension is flexibility. So, if you can contribute 1.5% into auto enrollment, that's fine. But if you want to be serious and actually provide yourself a decent retirement, where you can afford to go out every now and then, you want to be doing 5, 10, 15%, depending on what stage you are in your life. Because look, you have young kids, you want to pay off the mortgage, totally get it. I bring my own pension contributions down. But if you want the flexibility, you can't do auto enrollment, so you're just not going to get it. And on top of that as well, you're not in control of when you retire. So that's super important. With your own pension, you're in control. If you want to retire at 60 fully, that is your choice, and you can actually see how to reach that goal. If you say, look, I want 800,000 in my pension, or 600,000, or 2 million, whatever it is, you can see how you can get to that place by 58, 60, 61, mathematically, assuming some growth rates. With auto enrollment, you cannot retire before 66 unless you have income from another place, but you cannot touch that pension until age 66, which is not what we want. Having options is valuable, and that just
Absolutely.
takes it
And
all away. Yeah.
is there any option that if somebody has started an auto enrollment and down the road, for whatever reason, they've come into some money and they said, you know what, can they actually add a lump sum to their pension through the auto enrollment scheme? Do we know
Not
that
at all.
yet? Or
Not at
no?
all. No.
So it would be go and get a new scheme. No, go and put a new plan in place.
You'd have to have your own private pension on top of this auto enrollment one as well. So even if your employer wanted to, maybe the company's done well, and sometimes if companies do well, what they'll do is instead of giving salary increases, they'll just whack a few grand into someone's pension, which is nice. It's great for them. It's great for the employee as well. You just don't. The facility isn't there. It's just not there at all.
Yeah.
In the future, perhaps, maybe, we're just guessing really, but at the moment, no. 1.5, 1.5, 0.5 government, that is it.
And there's nothing been said that they will or that they won't in the future.
No, nothing. I'd assume they won't, to be honest, but it hasn't even been mentioned. From the information that I've seen, it hasn't been mentioned.
Right. Then in terms, when it comes to pensions, does it make more sense to have multiple small funds you're paying into, or to have one larger fund covering everything?
It really depends on the person and the scenario. So, most of us are going to have a number of jobs. No one works in the same company forever. Even if it's your own family's company, you tend to see those people who go off and do their own thing for a while and have their own pension scheme. In terms of when you retire, most of us are going to use all our pension at one point in time. However, as I've seen, I suppose more gradually over the last number of years, people will like to, they don't want to go from 40 hours a week to 0 hours a week. They want to step it down a little bit. And if you need to replace some of your income, let's say if you go from 40 to 20 hours a week, you want to replace some of your income, what you can do is you can retire maybe a smaller pension pot you have and leave your main pension pot for when you retire. So in that aspect, a couple of pensions is fine, 2 or 3, depending on your plan. Now, most of us mightn't use it, but having options is valuable. In terms of contributing to a number of pensions, again, it really depends on what's the options available to you. So in most scenarios, no, it makes no sense contributing to more than one pension. The revenue if you have access to a company pension, they say that you need to be prioritizing your funding for that company pension. Some people might have a very specific want in terms of a fund. Like that's one of the really only reasons, maybe charging structures. And if they're getting some really crazy charging structure that maybe a friend set up for them or whatever it is, I don't know, a very unique scenario, they might need to say, oh, let me maximize this and then I'll do this other scheme on top of it. But that's like 2% of people, 1% of people. 99% of us are going to fund through one pension scheme. It's totally fine. It's easier for us. It's easier for us to keep account of the money. It's easier for us to administer it. And it's just easier all around. In a very few circumstances, it might be appropriate to contribute to, maybe a private pension, really old structure that, the longer you contribute, the more bonuses you get at the end. Those type of pensions don't really exist anymore, but I can see that scenario happen. I've seen it happen maybe once or twice. It's not common.
Well,
yeah.
I'm conscious that the clock is quickly catching up on us. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you like to be doing?
Oh God. Chef. I'd say chef. Yeah, I like to eat. I like to cook. So that's all I can say. Well, I might want to do the hours, but I'd like to definitely try and cook some of the stuff and eat most of it. But chef, maybe a YouTube chef. That would probably be more suited. Less work.
Harder to make money out of, though.
Exactly. You have to say pros and cons. So no, I'm happy with what I do, but I definitely, I think in a different world, yeah, chef.
Yeah, I think you've answered this already for Monique. So if you're contributing to a private pension fund and want to retire early, And what happens to your auto enrollment pension?
Little bit different, yes. So yeah, if you have both, most of us are going to, well, most people will have the auto enrollment fund going forward at some stage, for whatever reason, right? So you're probably going to have two pension funds. So if it's a case where you have your auto enrollment and you have your main company pension scheme, you can retire at 55, 60, 62, whatever it is, with your main company pension scheme. Okay, so that's the main thing. You cannot touch auto enrollment no matter what until 66, unless you're seriously ill. Okay, so if you have a number of pension schemes, you have options with the other pension schemes. You have no option with auto enrollment. You have to retire that at 66. It doesn't matter if you're retiring all your other company pensions at 65.
Right. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time. And if anyone's looking to get you there, we do have the website rockwellfinancial.ie. On the bottom, there is a contact form there to get in touch with Brian. Brian, really appreciate your time today. And we'll catch up with you again very, very soon. As I said, we'll get you back in the new year because I have a string of questions coming in here. So we'll come back, bring you back again to go through things in more detail. So that's us for this week. We will be back in 2 weeks' time. And until then, we'll wish you all a very good afternoon.